Did you come specifically for the conclave?
Not really. I'm doing my studies over here in Rome, so since it's time of the conclave, I thought it's the best time to be here in the square, so probably get to witness the white smoke and also the new Pope.
And why do you think so many people from around the world, whether they're Catholic or not, come to the square during this time of the conclave?
I think the Pope is like a very important figure. The Pope has some standing, whatever the Pope says, the world listens. It's not only the Catholics, but people all around the world, they listen to what the Pope says and they respect the Pope's views. And therefore, you see that there's a lot of respect for the authority of the Pope, and that's why people come here. And I think the Church has had a wonderful tradition of having very good popes who have led the Church and even given guidance to the world, in their pontificate. And therefore, to witness this historic event will be a blessing for all of them also, and that's why they come over here.
And that was Father Prashant.
The pop culture, the popular culture surrounding church events. So, Father, what's your take on Conclave the movie?
Okay, this is my take. It's, when you know something about whatever the topic is, whether you're a doctor or a nurse or you're a teacher or you're in the government or you know about the monarchy, and they make a film or television show about that, you see all the mistakes and flaws. But usually movies like that aren't really about what they say they're about. Conclave, to me, is a movie about the main character, Cardinal Lawrence, played by Ralph Fiennes, and his crisis of faith. And it's his journey through that faith with the accoutrements of the conclave. The facts of how it's done they're off, but you can't do a documentary in 2 hours and have everything that's in that movie is for dramatic effect, and it relates to the crisis of faith that this man's going through. So you can't use it as a factual basis of what's going on inside that Sistine Chapel right now. It's not a battle between conservatives and liberals, although there's some aspects to it, I'm sure, and it's not about the flaws of each individual cardinal, which I'm sure people are thinking. So they see this movie and they think, okay, now I know what's going on. Well, some of it is true, but there's a lot of errors in it, What are some of the glaring ones that stood out to you? I don't know. I'd have to find out the facts about this, but I'm not sure if a cardinal in pectore would be allowed to enter like last minute like that, and there's no proof except for one little letter.
Yeah.
And I don't think that and that's the basis for the whole ending and the whole story, but which I think kind of threw the movie off a little bit. On
that point, that's exactly right, because it was made precise that no cardinal in pectore who's been named in secret, as anybody who's follows it knows that there was in the chest, and so he's keeping his cards close to the chest. The Pope can name a cardinal without announcing it to the world. Only he and that cardinal, I imagine, would know. But for it to be valid, he has to announce it publicly by the time of his death. Mm-hmm. So even if that cardinal were in pectore, if no one knew about it, if it wasn't public record, then he was not a cardinal.
Right.
He doesn't deserve, or wouldn't have the rights to enter.
And there was
a
lot of not manipulation, but a lot of the previous pope was kind of like the puppeteer, controlling what comes afterwards. And the Pope doesn't do that. That's not his job. And there was the secret report of Cardinal Tremblay, the John Lithgow character, and what he was doing. And then he gets Lawrence gets the sister Isabella Rossellini to Xerox it 108 times or whatever it is. I mean, it's all dramatic conflict, intrigue, and it gives the impression. But I'm telling you, that movie's made a lot of money in the last month. Just like I remember back in '79 or '80 when they made the movie The China Syndrome. 2 weeks later, 3 Mile Island happened, and again, the popularity went way up. I think it's a well-made movie, but you can't take it for fact.
Yeah, but it kind of gives us a feel like we know everyone's become an expert in conclave, and an expert on the smells and bells maybe behind it, and the show behind the proceedings that take on a grandeur that only the Vatican
I mean,
can do.
what was fascinating yesterday just to sit there and watch the whole movement from the Pauline Chapel to the Sistine Chapel and the Litany of Saints, and then sitting there and then doing the whatever the
they
prayer.
swore their oath.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like it was mesmerizing because you saw this is real, and that was already 2 hours and nothing happened, in that sense.
But I think for In Pectore, as I recall, I think it was 1991, Pope John Paul said there was a Cardinal In Pectore, whom he later revealed to be Cardinal Ignatius Gong Pin Mei. And the reason that a cardinal might not be named, a man might not be named, his life could be in danger. That usually was the rare times it happened. That was the case. He could be in danger if he was named, So Pope John Paul did name him, but
that was the whole story in this thing. It was the Archbishop of Kabul in Afghanistan. Now, I don't know if his life would be endangered based on I don't know the facts of living in that city, but that was the reason. But it was not announced. You're right.
I did not see the movie, but the one thing I do know about it is that on all the airplanes flying from the United States to Rome, it is one of the most selected movies
You're
that
the fifth
people
person
view.
that's told me that.
Yeah, exactly. So the much viewed in midair movie, Conclave.
Yeah, thank y'all for that. Excellent. So it's kind of like the movie, the Netflix series, the Crown.
Yes,
everyone thinks they know about the Crown, but we really have no idea, really, do we?
Yeah.
I mean, well, none of us are.
But it's some based on some fact, but it's an imagination dialogue that's in the head of the writer, and I mean that's 60 episodes right there.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's not the first of the. It's not the first movie to come out with and talk about the conclave. I mean, the conclave has been in a popular culture for as long as conclaves have been happening. There have been different expressions of it. There was the movie. It's probably sacrilegious to even mention it, but Borgia, and that had a whole. It was a long series, and they had pretty in-depth, extended episodes on the conclaves that led to the election of Pope Alexander VI and Julius II, and obviously interpretations and completely unhistorical, but it gives us a sense and kind of reveals for us the interest that the world has in what's happening here in the Vatican. As we come back to the present and to reality, and instead of Hollywood's reality, what's going on is a very much interest to the entire world. It's not just Catholics in the square. There are people from all over, and from all different faiths, and that was one hallmark of Pope Francis's papacy, was this welcoming. And if you even look at St. Peter's Square, the two colonnades, they represent the Church's embrace of the entire world. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, Joan.
Well, just thinking of
Constantinople after the schism. But we tend to forget how diverse the early papacy was as well. There's a period in the 6th and 7th century where we have a number of Greek, Syriac, and even North African popes. Popes like Gelasius were North African, Latin North African. But today we have Eastern Rite cardinals too, and this is a result of the reaffiliation of many churches with their own rites under papal leadership. There are 23 sui juris churches besides the Latin Church. And there are 5 cardinal electors today that are in the conclave from representing the Eastern rites. There's Patriarch, one Patriarch, Louis Sacco of the Chaldean Church in Baghdad, Basileus Clemis, who is Cyril Malankara from India, Bernard Jesus Serafiel, who is from the Ethiopian Church, Mikola.
Impressive and moving ceremony. You see all the cardinals walking in. Almost all of them are in the familiar red cassocks of the Latin Church. But the 5 Eastern cardinals stood out for, they all designed their own cardinalatial robes that reflected the traditions of their churches.
Absolutely. It's interesting to see how they work the red, the scarlet into their outfits, into their traditional outfits of their rite, and their traditional choir. And it's clearly the important, but it's also an oddity because these 5 cardinals are electing the head of the Latin Rite as well. It's an interesting extension to see how universal the Church is. That you have these Eastern cardinals participating in the election of the Patriarch of the West, and that's something that's different to consider.
And they also stand out for their headdress.
Yeah.
Because it's not the typical red zucchetto. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that was also a question when they are named cardinals. They have to ask what is the tradition of our church and how can we incorporate what's a Latin tradition, the cardinalate, into that vestment. I think there was an Eastern Rite cardinal in the 1500s, is that right? During one of the periodic attempts at reunion between the East and West. Bessarion.
Cardinal Bessarion, yes.
Remind me, where is he from?
He was from Constantinople. He was from the clergy of Constantinople, from the party that was supportive of both the Renaissance and a renewed dialogue with the Latins. And he became very important for the transmission of Eastern Greek culture and literature to the West, and was a visible sign of unity at that very difficult time.
And one of the first Eastern cardinals in a long time, and so had a very significant role to play. You mentioned, too, Ukrainian-born Mykola Bichok is aged 45. I believe he is, in fact, the youngest cardinal in the college. The oldest taking part is Spaniard Carlos Osora Sierra, who is aged 79. It's interesting, too, there are a couple of cardinals who have just turned 80 very recently, and had the conclave come a little bit earlier, they would have been allowed to enter. In fact, I remember when Benedict made his resignation, the timing of when the resignation went into effect, there was a consideration for the cardinals who were right on the edge there, and they did get everybody in. And yet, because of the circumstances of the time for that election, the number was still under the 120 limit.
There was one of the Syro-Malabar, one of the Eastern cardinals, just missed it by a week, I believe, and others like Cardinal Sarah, I think, would have expired in 2 weeks. As long as they're under 80 on the day the conclave starts, they're entitled to enter the conclave.
I think it's the day that the Pope dies. In fact, there's actually some question about that. I remember we had this discussion amongst ourselves in the broadcast booth, and UDG is very specific, and that too is to ensure, because after the Pope dies, there is the cardinals decide when the conclave opens, and that has historically been a question because of traditional long travel times, and in previous eras where there was a lot of politicking amongst the cardinalate,
that could have been an option to exclude someone. So they did change it so that it was from the moment the Pope died, and then it is very much in God's hands who is going to participate in the election. Speaking of age, a few more facts about the cardinals taking part in the conclave. 6 cardinals were actually born in the 70s, including Cardinal Baldassare Reina, the vicar of the Diocese of Rome, Canadian Cardinal Frank Leo, whom we mentioned, Lithuanian Cardinal Rolandas Makrikas, the coadjutor archpriest of the Basilica of St. Mary Major. He was involved very closely,
we have smoke.
And we do have smoke. Thank you, Don. Well done. It does look like the black smoke is coming out, signaling the conclusion of the second vote, and I think a little earlier than we were expecting.
Exactly. We weren't expecting this until about 12, at least, to 12:30. I believe we have Kelsey in the square. No, sorry about that. We do not. We're going to try to get her on the line here shortly to get this reactions. But yes, you can see, now we see images of the crowd. The black smoke has come out of the chimney above the Sistine Chapel. Everyone's got their phones out, taking videos of it. And we're going to connect now in here shortly. Okay.
And in fact, that's what you see if you're watching on the television screen. I think all of us remember, at least all of us in studio remember various elections and conclaves. And as soon as smoke starts coming out, the first question on everybody's lips, is it white or is it black? Happily, this time the black smoke has been very clear and is now as well. And when there is that moment, the crowd just goes silent as everybody's looking up and determining for certain what color is the smoke.
And on the modern means of communication yesterday in the square in the evening, whenever the smoke came out, it was dark. It was already, the sun had already gone down, and you could see the screens, and you can see on the square that it's a close up there. But those as soon as the smoke started coming out, those TVs turned off, and so that everyone would look up to the actual chimney and to focus on what's real and not just what's in front of our in front of our screens. And then it came back on, and you could see that the smoke was black. And now we're going to go live to Kelsey, who's in the square. Kelsey, what are you getting the sense of?
Wow, it's actually pretty exciting right now because you can hear the surprise from people. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, it hasn't come out yet. There's been no smoke. We're not going to see anything for now. And all around me, you could hear cheers, but also gasps and a couple of people saying, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. It's the first time I've ever seen this. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people that are actually exiting the square now, probably going to get some lunch to get prepared for the next smoke watch. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think the first question, as Chris said, is it black or white? And the second question is, what am I having for lunch? Are my dinner reservations still valid?
Can I get into the restaurant with 20,000 people trying to get their pizzas and their pastas?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you can see on the screen now that we've got the images, the square is not extremely full. There's heavy security to get in. You got to go through metal detectors. But the first part of the Via della Conciliazione is very full. That's a very packed area. And you can see people moving off, right, Kelsey?
Yeah, actually, it's you're right that in front of the Piazza, Via Conciliazione is packed with a lot of people, a lot of reporters, but a lot of people. And actually in the square, right in front of the steps leading up to the Basilica, that's pretty full, but around the obelisk, it's pretty empty. And of course, as you mentioned, Devin, a lot of people are exiting now, gonna get some water and food and recharge.
Yeah, because we're going to be back again this afternoon. That means the next possible smoke would be around 5:30. This is just a guess, more or less, of the indications that we've received. At that point, it would come out only if the first ballot elected a new pope, and so we would see white smoke only come out around 5:30 or 6 or so. Later this evening, for sure there will be a black or a white smoke at around between 7:30. It all depends on when the cardinals get started. And from there, we will continue on, and we hope the cardinals are moving along in their voting process and guiding us toward the future of the church.
And again, very interesting phenomenon I think we saw last night. The square starts out almost not quite empty. There's always lots of people there, but it seems kind of sparse. And then people start filtering in, it fills up. But the moment, I think we all remember, the moment the white smoke comes out, everybody in Rome drops what they're doing. I remember John Paul II's, the conclave after John Paul II, and when Benedict was elected, people were actually leaving their cars by the side of the street and running to St. Peter's Square. We saw two of Pope Francis, which was later in the evening, and although it was not so dense when the white smoke came out, by the time he appeared on the balcony, all of St. Peter's Square, all the way up Via della Conciliazione, packed shoulder to shoulder with people. The whole world shows up.
Where we are right now, a sea of people coming, from near the Casa Sant'Angelo, and just pouring into the Piazza Pia area, and then, as you said, down Conciliazione. There's no way you would have tried to go against the crowd. You would have been trampled, I think. But it was an astonishing thing.
And since this brings us to, we've seen the black smoke, we do not have a pope yet. Voting will continue this afternoon. And with that, we're going to wrap up this broadcast. We thank you, Kelsey, for helping us out in the square, Eduardo, Father Greg Uppersell, Joan Lewis, Dr. Don Prodlo. We really appreciate all of your help and walking us through the intricacies of this historic moment here in Vatican City State. And so our broadcast will pick up again this afternoon at around 5 or 5:30, depending on the indications. And many thanks go to our in-studio sound engineers and our producers. And we thank you for joining us as we await the Cardinal's decision about who will lead the Catholic Church as the next Pope. I'm Devin Watkins.
I'm Christopher Wells. Thank you all for joining us. Also, be sure to follow throughout the day our website, as well as our social media accounts, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, where you can find out lots more information about the conclave, about the process of electing a pope, and join us again this afternoon for the next Chimney Watch.
press live stream of the conclave to elect the next pope. I'm Giovanna Dell'Orto. I'm standing just outside the Vatican, and we have just seen black smoke again come out of the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. That means that, again, not enough votes were secured by any particular person to be elected the next pope. So this is exactly what we saw last night when there was the first round of voting. The cardinal electors had 2 more rounds this morning, and they have failed to agree, hence the black smoke. So let me tell you a little bit more about what you might be seeing around on our live coverage, what my AP team is reporting on the ground, as well as what we might expect coming up next. So yesterday afternoon, the 133 cardinal electors finally gathered in conclave, that literally means under lock and key, inside the Sistine Chapel to begin rounds of voting for the next pope, the pope that will succeed Pope Francis, who passed away on April 21st. How long it will take is an open question. It has been standard